I've lived in this city my whole life. People think that means I know it like the back of my hand. But that's not true. Cities aren't static. They breathe, they shift, they change when you're not looking. A coffee shop you passed yesterday might be a boarded-up shell today. A street you've walked 1,000 times might suddenly feel narrower, darker, as though the buildings themselves have leaned in to listen to your footsteps. It started on a Thursday. I'd just finished a long day at work and was walking home through the rain. I usually cut down a street called Barker Avenue, but that night, for no reason I can explain, I took the long way around. It wasn't a decision so much as a pull, like something was guiding me without asking for my permission. The detour took me past a tall, glass apartment building I'd never noticed before. That was strange, because I pride myself on recognizing city architecture, especially the newer developments, but this one looked like it had been there for decades. The windows were dark except for a single light, faint and yellow, on the 12th floor. I stopped and stared at it. There was nothing remarkable about the light itself. What held me there was the movement behind it. Someone was pacing, not in the restless way of someone on the phone, but with deliberate, measured steps, back and forth, over and over. Before I knew it, I'd stepped inside the lobby. The security desk was empty. The air smelled faintly of metal, and the hum of crock-in-the-sorry fluorescent lights was louder than it should have been. The elevator doors were already open, as though waiting for me. I told myself I was being curious. That's all. Nothing dangerous about curiosity. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. The elevator ride was silent, except for the faint groaning of old cables. The buttons had numbers, but none of them were lit except 12. I didn't press it, it was already glowing red when I stepped in. When the doors opened, the hallway was dim. The carpet under my shoes felt damp. The walls were painted a washed-out green, and the air was cooler here, almost uncomfortably so. The light at the end of the hallway flickered, casting shadows that seemed to stretch far too long before snapping back. I walked toward apartment 1204. I don't know how I knew it was the one I just did. The pacing sound was louder now, a steady rhythm on the floorboards inside. I raised my hand to knock, but the sound stopped instantly. Then came a voice, low and calm, speaking directly to me through the door. "I've been waiting for you." My chest tightened. I took a step back, every nerve in my body telling me to leave, but my feet felt rooted to the spot. The door opened just a crack, enough to see a sliver of the dimly lit room beyond, and something moving in the far corner. "Come in," the voice said again. I didn't move. My mind was screaming at me to turn around, but a strange pressure in my skull kept me frozen. The shadows in that corner seemed to ripple, as if they were breathing. Then I realized there was no one standing at the door. The voice wasn't coming from the room at all. It was coming from inside my own head. I stumbled back, heart pounding, and turned to leave, but the hallway stretched out impossibly far, like the walls had shifted while I wasn't looking. The elevator at the end was gone, and behind me, the door to 1204 creaked open wider. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at that open door, but my breath felt heavier with each passing second. The sound inside my head had quieted, but it wasn't gone. It lingered like a faint echo, like a thought that wasn't mine trying to blend with the ones that were. I finally moved. Not forward, not toward the door. I turned my back on it and walked fast, almost a jog, toward the far end of the hallway. The walls still seemed longer than they should have been, but I told myself that was just panic warping my sense of space. That happens, right? Panic plays tricks on the mind. Halfway down the hallway, a soft thud came from behind me. Then another. Slow, steady steps following mine. I didn't look back. I told myself I wouldn't. But then I noticed something ahead that made me stop in my tracks. A mirror. It was a large wall-mounted mirror, clean and bright despite the dimness around it. I could see myself clearly, except the reflection wasn't quite right. I was standing still, but in the glass, I was still walking. My reflection's head was tilted, ever so slightly, and its lips were moving. I leaned forward, trying to read them. The words were silent, but I could almost make them out. "You're already inside." My throat tightened. I spun around and nearly tripped over my own feet. The hallway behind me was empty. The door to 1204 was closed now. No sign it had ever been open. The elevator, somehow, was back. Its doors stood open, waiting. I didn't waste another second. I ran for it, jumped inside, and slammed the L button for the lobby. The doors shut with a soft chime, and the elevator jerked into motion. Halfway down, the lights flickered. Then they went out entirely. For a few seconds, there was only darkness and the sound of cables groaning. Then the emergency light kicked on, flooding the space with a cold, pale glow. That's when I saw it. In the corner of the elevator, huddled like it had been there all along, was a man. His face was pale, almost colorless, and his eyes weren't focused on me. They weren't focused on anything. He just stared past me, lips trembling slightly as though whispering to himself. "How did you?" I started, but the words stuck in my throat. He finally spoke, but not to me. "Don't look at it," he whispered, his voice brittle. "Look at what?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. His gaze snapped toward me, then not his head, just his eyes, and for a brief moment I thought he was going to say something else. Instead, he smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was wrong. The kind of smile that feels like it's only there to keep something else inside from getting out. The elevator dinged, and the doors slid open. We weren't in the lobby. We weren't anywhere I recognized. The hallway outside was narrow, lined with doors, each painted a dull gray. The numbers on them weren't in sequence. 31, 14, 88, 2. Some had no numbers at all. The air smelled faintly of burning wires. The man stepped out without looking back at me. His movements were slow, deliberate, like he was following a path only he could see. I stayed inside the elevator, one hand gripping the panel, desperately trying to find a button that would take me somewhere familiar. But all the buttons were gone. In their place was a single one. 1204. I felt my stomach drop. My finger hovered over it for just a second until the voice came back, louder now, pulsing in my head like it was wrapped around my thoughts. "You left, but you never left." The man in the hallway stopped. Slowly, he turned to face me. His smile widened. Then, without moving his lips, I heard his voice inside my head too. "You should see it now." I slammed my hand against the elevator door close button. The doors started to slide shut, but something slipped through. A shadow, impossibly thin and long, curling into the space like smoke under a door. It didn't move like smoke, though. It moved like it knew exactly where it was going. Straight for me. The elevator lights went out again, and in the dark, something brushed my hand. When the elevator lights came back on, I wasn't standing anymore. I was on the floor, knees pressed to my chest, my palms flat against the cold steel. My breathing was ragged, like I'd been running. I couldn't remember sitting down. I couldn't remember anything after that touch in the dark. The elevator doors were still closed, only now they were mirrored on the inside. And in that mirror, I wasn't alone. There was me, knees drawn up, pale, terrified, and directly behind me, something else. It was tall, its head almost brushing the ceiling, but impossibly thin, as if someone had stretched a shadow into a human shape. Its face, if you could call it that, was a smear of movement, features never settling in one place long enough to see clearly. I spun around. Nothing there. But in the mirror, it hadn't moved. It was still there, inches from me. I backed into the corner, away from the glass, not daring to blink. I thought about the man I'd seen earlier, about his warning, "Don't look at it," and now I couldn't look away. The elevator chimed, and the doors slid open. It wasn't the lobby. It was a street, my street, but not right. The buildings leaned slightly, like they were bowing inward, and every window was black, as if the entire city had been abandoned. No sound, no cars, no people, only the distant hum of something low and mechanical, like the city was breathing through hidden lungs. I stepped out. The air was cold, and the pavement felt different beneath my shoes, softer somehow, almost like walking on carpet. I turned around to see the elevator doors close behind me, but there was no building, no entrance. The doors simply vanished into the side of a wall, leaving only smooth concrete. I started walking. I don't know why. There was no destination, just the heavy, sinking feeling that if I stayed still, something would find me. The street stretched on longer than it should have, each intersection identical to the last. The street signs were blank, the lampposts bent at strange angles, casting shadows that didn't match the objects creating them. Once, I saw my own shadow break off from me and keep walking ahead for several steps before fading. At one corner, I heard it, footsteps behind me. Slow, measured. I didn't turn. The voice came next. "You've always been here." I froze. It was the man from the elevator. I didn't have to see him to know. His voice was quieter now, but every word carried a strange echo, as if more than one mouth was speaking. "You thought you lived somewhere else, worked somewhere else. That was the lie. You were always here." I turned. He was standing in the middle of the street, but his body wasn't quite solid. Parts of him flickered, like he was half in shadow, half in light. His smile was wider now, stretched beyond what skin should allow. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice cracking. He tilted his head, and for a moment, it wasn't his head anymore. It was the blurred, shifting smear from the elevator mirror. "We want you to remember." The street behind him began to fold in on itself, buildings bending like paper. The sky above warped clouds twisting into shapes that almost formed faces. The hum grew louder, vibrating in my bones. I backed away, but the ground under my feet was no longer pavement. It was the hallway from the apartment building. The same carpet, the same numbered doors. I was running now, past 1,202, 1,203, 1,204. The door was open. Inside was only darkness. But in that darkness, shapes moved. Familiar shapes. My apartment furniture, my desk, my chair. All in the same positions, but not right. Too tall, too thin, too warped. And sitting at the table was me. Not exactly me. The version at the table was smiling, and their eyes were black from corner to corner, like the color had been drained from them entirely. They raised a hand and beckoned. "Come in," they said in my voice. "It's time." I took a step back, and the door slammed shut. I was alone in the hallway again. The lights flickered. When they came back, all the doors were gone. Just smooth, endless walls stretching in both directions. I started walking. I don't know how long I walked. Minutes, hours, days. Time didn't feel right anymore. My legs burned, my throat ached, but I kept moving until I saw it. A single door ahead, white instead of brown, with no number. I reached for the handle. It opened into my apartment. My real apartment. Everything was where it should be. The clock ticked softly. Outside the window, the city looked normal. I stepped inside, my knees shaking. The door closed behind me, and in the reflection of the window glass, the tall, thin shape stood directly behind me.